I have a few questions right now when we are doing the first interview, when we are talking with the tech recruiter, with the HR person that we are having the conversation. And I would like to know, what are the characteristics and qualities that you're trying to find on that screening? Because I really liked the first meeting with the HR. I feel like I always do good on this kind of interviews, but I would like to know, what are you searching for? Because usually I try to throw everything that I have onto the recruiter, but that's not the best way to do it. I
Yeah,
would like to know what you think.
for sure. So I think before any interview, you need to spend time researching the company, the position, product market that they're in, maybe competitors of what they're doing, and understanding what you're applying for. I think these days it's very easy with the easy apply button to apply to 30 jobs. You have 10 phone calls, you do zero research, right?
Yeah.
Before going into it. So I think the first thing is before the interview, spend the time to actually research the company and understand the space that they're in and what you're interviewing for. Once you have that and you're speaking to people, the more you're in the industry, the more experience, the different tools you've used, and all of that stuff. You don't need to throw everything out and all at once, right? So I think by doing research and understanding what the company's doing and what industry they're in and what they're trying to achieve and what the role is, you can then take all of your experience and focus on the relevant stuff to this job. So I think that's something that's very, very important. And I think also answering questions directly is very important. And what I mean by that is that for any question, kind of like what I'm doing now, you could answer for very long periods of time and just kind of beat around the bush. But in an interview, you want to be clear and concise. So they ask you a question about a specific tool, I would answer the question about that tool, right? As opposed to going around the bush. And if you don't know an answer to something, it's okay to say, you know what, I haven't used that tool, but I've used these similar tools, or I have not used that tool, however, I'm willing to learn. Like it's okay to be straight up about it versus beating around the bush. I think it's answering. So, and then, sorry, to answer the initial part of your question of what they look for, on
Okay.
top of that, I think there's an aspect of, yes, can they do the job technically? So when they ask you questions about technicals, if you have it, great. If you don't have it, great. If you have it, where did you use it? That's how I would answer. They're also looking for communication. So how you speak to people, how you answer the questions. Are you friendly? Do you speak too quickly? Do you speak too slowly? Do you have a heavy accent? Do you ask them to slow down, or do you understand what they're saying? And can you answer clearly? So I think HR specifically looks at briefly technical, just to make sure that you fill in the 8 years of experience, 5+ years of XYZ tool, whatever. But they also filter for communication and culture fit. And so you're trying to get all of that in there in a half an hour phone call, which is kind of tough. But if you're answering questions clearly, if you aren't super nervous and you're able to talk about your past, and if you answer relevant questions, I think that's going to get the point across.
All right, because there's a lot of people that maybe are a little bit scared when they are talking with the recruiters. And actually that I feel like that's the easiest part, at least for me, because I remember that, okay, I know the tech recruiter maybe knows something about JavaScript and automation because he needs to know, but it's not something that I need to shred in front of him, right? Like I don't need to say specific words, specific things. I just need to show them what I did with that and how long I'm using that tool, or how long I'm using that technology that he's asking for, right?
Yeah, so to make it clear, IT recruiters, we're not coders, right? So as much as we want to understand how long you've used something, if you talk purely technical to me, that means you can't hold a normal conversation. You only know tech and you're just listing tools. That's not what we're looking for, right? So when they ask you about your experience, they're not asking you, oh, at my last company, I used XYZ and just like a bunch of buzzwords, right? They see your resume. But what they're asking for is I joined the company as the first automation engineer. I was there, I helped build the automations framework from scratch. I did the research, I did the design, and I architected the framework from scratch. It was a team of one, and these are the tools I used, right?
Perfect.
So being very clear of what you did there is what they're looking for in English. You have to break it down to like speaking with people in a conversation, not a technical interview where here I used XYZ tools, and that's it. People want to know who you did it at, in what context, right? And kind of breaking it down. For instance, if you're a developer, I'm a front end developer. I was working on a team of 5. I was working on their growth marketing team, so I worked on their I don't know, Shopify application or their checkout screen, and just painting a picture of what you did. Not saying I'm a front end developer, I'm using React, Redux, and you know what I mean? Like
I get it.
you want to elaborate a little bit on what you've done.
Yeah, like try to create environment when how you used it, right? It's easier for front end people because usually it's very shows up. But for automation, maybe that can be a little bit harder. But it's also a way to do that. There's also a way to do that very easily. Like talking about like coverage, talking about what are the features that you test and then how did you test and what types of tool you use it. But you don't have to be very precise. You just need to at least say if I'm wrong, but try to answer the requirements that you see on the job description and try to do that for the tech recruiter, right? Like
You could also, again, paint the picture. So if you say, I joined a company where it was 80% manual, they had very little automation.
perfect.
They hired me to help them with automation. So I was with the company for 6 months or the last 8 years, whatever the number is. And within that time, we brought it from 20% automation to 80% automation. And these are the tools that we used, or I used, being
Perfect.
specific. And I think that will help for sure.
Nice, nice, great, great.